let's continue our discussion on the hallmarks of cancer. And today we're going to look at what these hallmarks look like. So here's a picture of the first time these hallmarks were presented by Hanahan and Weinberg in 2000. And you can see that there are 6 boxes on the screen. Each box represents a specific hallmark of cancer. Let's start from the bottom. We have enabling replicative immortality. Then we have inducing angiogenesis, resisting cell death, sustaining proliferative signaling, evading growth suppressors, and activating invasion and metastasis. This slide also has reference to some of the terms that we discussed earlier. Now I'm going to cover all of these individually, but what I want you to know is that when you look at this diagram, this represents the basic framework of what a cancer cell does. So these 6 things are the most common features of a cancer cell. In the center of this circle, you can see that we have a representation of the tumor microenvironment. So what do these boxes tell us? Let's start with the blue one. The blue box tells us that cancer cells divide infinitely, which means that they do not stop dividing. If we go to the red box, it's telling us that all cancer cells make blood vessels. And then the gray box tells us that cancer cells refuse to die. They do not undergo apoptosis. The green box basically says that the body continues to produce growth signals, which means that all the cancer cells receive this message that they have to continue growing. The brown box tells us that they are immune to growth suppressors, which means that they cannot hear when the body is telling them to stop growing, to stop dividing. And then the black box eventually tells us that after a cancer has grown, it activates the invasion protocol. The invasion protocol is basically when a cancer says, all right, now that we are a lot of cells in number, let's spread out and conquer other areas of the body. So these are all the 6 basic functions that a cancer cell does. Later on, Hanahan and Weinberg found that there are 4 more properties that cancer cells exhibit. So now we have the cancer hallmark 2.0. Those 4 hallmarks are divided into 2 categories. You have emerging hallmarks, which means that they help the cancer cell to emerge, to proliferate, to grow. And then there are enabling characteristics help the cancer cell to survive. So these properties somehow create this kind of environment, this kind of situation which allows the cancer cell to be born. These 4 hallmarks were given 11 years later in 2011. So emerging hallmarks in purple and pink, the purple one states the deregulating cellular energetics, which means that the way a cell uses energy or derives energy is different compared to how a cancer cell makes use of biochemical pathways for energy generation or consumption. The pink box says that your immune system is somehow impaired during cancer. The enabling characteristic is basically inflammation. Cancer cells promote inflammation. Your tumors promote inflammation. We are going to look at it in detail once we delve deeper into the hallmarks. The indigo one, it's talking about the genetics of cancer. All cancer cells have a mutation and they have an unstable genome, and we are going to look at why do cancer cells have this property. So recently I took this course from Jack's lab on cancer, and Dr. Stewart of University of Washington came up with 2 new hallmarks of her own apart from those 4 ones. She has created 2 new boxes in order to explain how those 2 components are involved in it. The teal box says that you have supportive cells, which means that there are cells that help the cancer to grow. And these could be your adipose cells, your neuronal, endothelial, pericytes, epithelial. There's another thing called the fibroblasts, and we are going to have a look at what fibroblasts actually do because they are involved in cancer and inflammation. What I want you to understand is that previously I told you that fibroblasts secrete collagen. But fibroblasts have a lot of other functions as well, because they have to create the cellular matrix, the skeleton of the cell. They have a lot of things to do. These cells lay the groundwork, foundation of the cell, can be involved in cancer promotion or cancer development. And we are going to have a look at how they do that. A small tip to help you remember stuff: any cell that contains the word blast means that the cell is going to secrete something. That blast cell is not matured, and it is somewhere or the other in the process of secreting something. So osteoblasts are cells that build up bone. Fibroblasts are cells that build up your cellular matrix. So now is the time to look at this picture in the center of the circle. A very simple diagram which shows what a tumor looks like. And you can see that you have different kinds of cells inside it. Lots of confusing labels that if you're new to this topic, you'd be like, whoa, what are all these? Let's start by identifying our cells. Our cancer cells are cells that you can see in the gray color. So we have a lot of cancer cells. This collection of cancer cell is creating a tumor, and as you can see that this tumor has a lot of components inside it. So you can see that there are endothelial cells, the cells that make up your vessels, and then along those endothelium cells you can see parasites. You see the green parts, the green blobs along the length of the endothelial. They are parasites, and I've explained it to you before that parasites are attached outside on the endothelial vessel. Then there are star-shaped cells, which are fibroblasts, and they are specifically associated to this tumor, which makes them cancer-associated fibroblasts. Now you can see that there are other cells in pink, which are your immune cells, and somehow these immune cells are also responsible for increasing inflammation and thereby causing an increase in cancer cell proliferation or spreading out. Apart from all of these, you can see that there are two more cells that I've not talked about yet. One is the cancer stem cell, which is the progenitor of all the cancer cells. It is the father of all the cancer cells in this tumor, and it's going to create more cancer cells because it has so many mutations inside it that whatever cell that it divides into, it's going to create a cancer cell. The other thing that you can see, notice the shape of the cell. Your invasive cancer cell has somewhat of a detached, torn out boundary, and you can see that the place from where the invasive cancer cell is coming out, it is exactly where the endothelium has been broken. Your cancer cell leaks out into your vessels, which means that your cancer cell has to detach from this extracellular matrix, this tumor environment, and then travel through your vessel, squeeze itself out of the endothelial and get out of that tumor so that it can metastasize to another portion of the body. On the lower left of the screen, you can see this legend of different colored cells that are color coded, and you can easily identify what image trying to convey. So when I was talking about the tumor microenvironment earlier, this was what I was talking about. Like, this tumor has a lot of different kinds of cells influencing this environment and are in the favor of cancer growth. These cells are somehow playing a part in cancer progression or cancer development. Here's another diagram of the tumor microenvironment, and there is a very basic thing that I want you to understand and see. You can see that there are cancer cells which are darker yellow compared to normal cells which have a light shade of yellow. And what I want you to notice is the shape of the cell. You can see that normal cells have a uniform circular boundary. However, these cancer cells are not uniform. They have weird shapes that are not regular. And notice the nucleus. The nucleus of these cancer cells is distorted, which means that these nuclei have some sort of genetic abnormality. Also, you can notice one of the cells that is trying to invade through the endothelium, and you can see this at the bottom of the screen near the cross section of the vessel. this is where this cancer cell is trying to metastasize. This is called epithelial to mesenchymal transition, and we're going to have a look at that. EMT is the short form of it, and this is necessary for every cancer cell to undergo. We have fibroblasts, you can see them in pink color, and then we have immune cells, we have macrophages, we have dendritic cells, and we have our characteristic lymphocytes with their lobed nucleus. And what else do we have here? We have our red blood cells inside the vesicles, and we have certain dots of different colors, and these dots represent immune signaling molecules, certain pro-angiogenic factors. These factors stimulate the growth of new blood vessels. Keep in mind that a cancer cell is, how should I make it easier for you? It's a kind of a rip-off of the original cell. It's a distorted version of the original cell. So it has very limited capability of building stuff on its own. So whatever blood vessels that it's going to form, they're going to be very leaky. It would have small pores. That word is called fenestrated. So they have tiny holes in those capillaries which are called fenestrate. Immune cells can detect these vessels very easily if they are nearby, and these vessels are the way that a cancer cell leaks out and spreads to other parts of the body. So now that you have a basic grasp of what a tumor microenvironment looks like, we're going to move further and discuss our cell cycle, which is yet another fundamental concept that you need to know in order to understand what goes wrong in a cancer cell.